it's one of the things when we originally spoke to Michael, he's like, what's your exit strategy? And we're like, we don't have one. And we did slowly start talking about that because we're like, well, we want to exit at some point. So one of the things we're working with Michael on is, how to make the business more presentable for an exit. As always happens with these kind of things, when you get the expert in, they're like, well, here's how I can help shape you, here's how I can help skill you, and here's the gaps you currently have. So it only took a couple of months for us to go, yeah, we're sold. And we obviously kept him all the way to the end. But in my mind, Michael is the cash flow thing, because that made a huge impact to us.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting as Michael's talking, like all these things come floating back. That whole skill set that, we had Michael and his virtual CFO skill set. We had Michael's network that he could tap into anytime there was a problem. And we had all the bookkeeping. So you get all these things that you can suddenly tap into that can help you versus just one person who has a singular skill set. And that was cheaper for us than actually hiring someone.
I'm also really proud of what Lee and his partner have built with the ID crowd as well. So I wanted that to be part of this celebration. And
absolutely,
I've coached a lot of people in this space, in the service business space particularly. And I think what they built, I think they should be really proud of in terms of the culture they built, the exit they were able to achieve, and also the ongoing win with keeping their team together post-exit. So I thought they'd be a perfect fit for this call. And in terms of what I do, obviously I'm a fractional or virtual CFO, and I try and help people hit their goals and help them understand their numbers a bit better, formulate where they want to go and what they're trying to do, and then do anything I can to assist them get there.
So my name is Lee. So I was, I guess, the COO at the ID crowd, looking after the operations side, finance, project management, strategy and culture and all that kind of stuff. And I now work for Deloitte after an exit. So I think one of the initial conversations I had with Michael right at the start is going, I'm not a finance Luddite. I know a bunch of stuff, but I'm also not qualified in any means the manner. And I think one of the challenges I had is being the only finance person, you second guess everything. So if I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this, you're like, is that the right thing? I have no idea. And I didn't really have anyone I could bounce those kind of ideas off. And when we originally spoke, there was the core bookkeeping that we needed looked after. But I was also talking to Michael of going, well, I really need that, kind of virtual CFO, that kind of founder, the person you can bounce ideas off and they're like, yeah, this is a good idea, or have you thought about this? Or actually, that's a terrible idea and you're breaching the law. And it was so interesting that even the stuff that I was doing that was right, I was wasting so much energy second guessing it because I didn't have that person who can go, yeah, that's sound. So that's when Michael kind of helped out a lot. And we were an established business by then. We were 8 years old. So we obviously knew how to run the company, but it was, just so much effort in second guessing. And like, you really need someone that you can talk to about a lot of this stuff and go, just even offloading on Michael was good. But having him kind of reinforce those ideas, because I was just going, like, I'd spend a lot of time researching things, which was a waste of my energy, but then I would also just spend so much time in my head going, am I making the right decision?
Just to jump in, that I think a lot of the value I was adding, because Lee's very financially literate, very switched on, had fantastic reporting on his own through his own kind of software choices. So that the conversations were more around, I was helping share industry best practice. I was helping share my experience of what I've seen that's work in other businesses, and having that vision across different industries and experience working with people just like Lee in those kind of businesses. I think the value was added in those kind of conversations around, here's how other people have approached a similar problem. Here's this is what needs to be in balance in the business. These are the core things that have to be in balance. And these are the things that you can kind of choose if you want to do or not. So helping define those scopes a little bit.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Makes perfect sense.
So we could pull data from Smartsheet, from Xero, from Workflow Max, from HubSpot, to start doing some forecasting. So from our various Grow dashboards, we could forecast if a project was going to be on budget or not on budget based on how quickly we're delivering versus how fast we're burning through the budget. That had a huge impact on our margins because identifying a quarter of the way into the project that you're burning through budget too fast meant we could actually sit down with the customer and have conversations about scope, whereas previously we only really knew once we ran out of budget. So we get 80% of the way through the project and we're like, oh, we've got no more money in Workflow Max. And then that's a very hard conversation to have with the customer and go, oh, by the way, we're out of money. That also pulled in everything from HubSpot. So people will go, well, this is how much the value is worth. This is the percentage likely that we're going to win it. This is the close date. And we'd actually forecast a revenue pipeline from that. So after talking to Michael, and we built out some decent models of how much revenue we needed each month, we could actually look at the Grow data and go, are we forecasting to hit those revenue targets? It's actually one of the things when we first spoke to Michael, he was like, you're in a good position. What do you want from me? And that's where we spoke about reinforcing what I'm doing. So I built a bunch of models, but I was like, are these right? So one thing we did at the start is we went through and dissected a whole bunch of stuff that I'd done, and we made a couple of tweaks to it. But the other thing is kind of going, what am I missing? What's best practice? And that's where Michael helped put together a bunch of stuff. So I had my reporting, but Michael also built his own reporting. Well, I didn't build it. He already had it for his other customers that he could then apply to us, which was really handy. So I had my stuff, and then Michael brought in his stuff. Kind of going, well, if you were the CFO here, what would you give to me? How would you report to me? And that's what he kind of brought in and went, well, this is the stuff you need to care about. And that helped me tweak some of my reporting. So I'm like, okay, well, now that I know Michael's going to be looking at this and this, I changed a bunch of my stuff so that I could look at it more frequently each week. So that when I sat down with Michael, I'm like, yep, he's going to ask me about this. He's going to ask me about this. He's going to ask me why that's down. And it helped me frame everything I was doing and prep for it, which was really good because it helped. Like there's always stuff that you're missing, right? Because you build what you know, and I'm like, cool, this is good, this is all working. But when Michael came in with his models, he could help shape it. It's like, okay, well, I'm ignoring that, I'm missing that, I'm not aware of that. So that was one thing. And the other thing is, like, as he helped build out those models, that's where the stuff like the building up the HubSpot sales forecasting, because one of the things we had is, like, we had the data on, I already had the data on what sales were closing, when that revenue is going to hit. But where we kind of struggled is, well, what do we need? So what should our targets be each month to hit? We know how much we want to do in a year. We've got data on how much is in the pipeline, but everyone was like, well, is that healthy or not? So Michael helped us go, well, this is the kind of numbers you should be looking for each month. So we could sit down with Nick and the sales team and go, well, this is what you want to kind of hit.
Michael, if you want to tell the story a little bit from your side of things, like how things looked when you arrived, and sort of what your instincts were, or plan of attack was once you were on the scene.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first started working together, it was kind of for a targeted piece of work. They had an immediate concern around their kind of finance department with a long-term team member leaving. And a lot of that work was around plugging in the right resource to help them with that bookkeeping support, keeping their data up to date, making sure that's all correct. And so the first portion of our work together was kind of like the finance processes and getting that nailed, getting the right resource plugged in. First tried an external contractor that didn't quite work, and then we plugged in to help support that side of things to stabilize that. And from there, once that immediate concern was not as a high priority, it did become a little bit more about goal setting and where do you want to take this? Because Lee and Nick, both who were running the business, were very proactive, really forward thinking, and they ran a high performing team. Everyone was highly skilled and they delivered really great work. I was really kind of proud to be part of that team and see the kind of craftsmanship that they had behind the product and the care they had behind the delivery of their product. So for our conversations naturally then merged into where do you want to take it? And they did have some cash flow issues with the project-based nature of their work, as they mentioned.
Of course. Yeah, that's
that's
often the case, right?
Yeah,
you get these kind of sine waves, and sometimes all of the waves overlap on a down point.
Exactly. So from my kind of accounting world, I could see that the lack of monthly recurring revenue was a challenge for them, and managing those ups and downs. Although they were consistently busy and delivering great products, they were still having the cash flow concerns. So I was really proud of our work together, and Lee is an IT whiz. He knows how to build whatever you need. But it was, I think, just our collaboration and maybe my accountability to help us really track, are we hitting the milestones we need to in order to get to where we need to go, and helping us stair-step our way through that process. I was really proud of how they grew during our time together, especially through COVID, which was a tricky time for everyone. And they built it up to then obviously have an exit, which was a great result for them.
Maybe the one specific thing that sort of made the biggest difference, if there was any one thing like that.
In my mind, Michael, is the cash flow thing, because that made a huge impact to us.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting as Michael's talking, like all these things come floating back. Yeah, there was actually, before I dive into that, when I think one of the big things Michael did at the start was as well asking where we want to be, because it wasn't something we thought of. Like we were just like, heads down, like just running. But I think the biggest impact was definitely the cash flow thing. So, and it is one thing that Michael really helped with, because we knew we had a problem, but I don't think we weren't actively trying to fix it at that point. It was just like, oh, this is a struggle. So when Michael first came into the business, we had good visibility, but our cash runway was always like 2 to 4 weeks. In that, if we stopped selling, we would run out of cash in 2 to 4 weeks if revenue stopped coming in. So we had enough money to keep it going for 2 to 4 weeks. The company had run like that for about 8 years.
Like it seems really tight, right? But it's also, as we talked about just before, not at all unusual for project-based businesses.
Yeah, you just got to keep shoveling the coal into the fire and keep it burning. And it always just worked, but it was always just this big point of stress that you've always just got this small cash buffer. And it's one of the things that when Michael came in, he was like, we need to fix this. And we kind of sat down and he was like, well, you need to build out your services revenue. We didn't really have the option for passive revenue. We didn't want to build a product or that. So we actually went away and went, how can we solve this? And we did it. We actually sat down with the team and looked at a bunch of various options on how we can do it. And the solution wasn't ultimately that hard, but it was just something we hadn't really focused on. You just kind of, after being that way for so long, you just get used to it. But essentially all we did is we put a whole bunch of milestones. So all our contractual milestones ended up going in Workflow Max. And then we pulled those into the Grow dashboard. And then we actually sat down and spoke to the project managers about them every couple of weeks. So we'd be like, every couple of weeks, these are your invoicing milestones that are coming up. Are they still on track? If they're delayed, why are they delayed? Can you bring them forward? And just by having those conversations, because what previously happened is no one cared about it too much. If the invoicing milestone got missed, it would just get pushed out with the project. No one cared because the team didn't care too much about cash flow, not because they don't care about us, but it wasn't a focus for them. So we created that report where we could see the milestones. The other thing we did is we actually opened up our reporting to the whole team. So each month we would run through how much money we have in the bank, what the current cash flow pipeline is, how much revenue we've made, profitability, all that kind of stuff. And what that really helped with is, with the team seeing the cash pipeline and what it actually means when an invoice is delayed, they actually started having this conversation with customers and said, hey, can we invoice this now? Or, that when they were moving deliverables around, they would make sure the ones that had invoicing tiled to them were a bit more important. So it's just creating that focus, which was really nice. And I think by the time we exited, we had about 4 months of cash flow, which was really nice. It was so much more stress-free, because when you had a bad month, you would go from 4 months to 3 months and we're like, groovy. And we were pretty good most of the time, but there were a couple of points where we were like, oh, we don't know if we're going to be able to pay everyone. And that was typically when invoices just got delayed by customers. So we had a couple of months, especially over like at Christmas, where no one paid us. They did eventually pay us, but everything was delayed by like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And as a small business, is 1 month worth of cash flowing back.
How did customers pay, and what were the payment terms? Like, was it that you have like a net 30 or a net payment arrangement? Did they just send you funds over Stripe? What did that look like?
So it was pretty much all purchase orders and bank transfers, because of the customers we deal with, they were all very large enterprises.
Yeah. Okay. So they're good for
it. They were good for it. Eventually, they're always good for it. We've had very low non-payment rate, like 1 or 2 in the entire life of the business. The biggest problem is you are a small cog in a big machine.
Yes.
So one of the big problems we had, and I think Michael and the team really helped with this, is getting on top of our payables is, so pretty much all our invoices were net 30. We did try and get them down as possible, but realistically, you have to do what the customer does. They're not going to change their payment terms for us. And one of the biggest problems we had is, so everyone's got this clause. They're like, oh, it's 30 days from the properly formed invoice being presented. Send them an invoice, you would wait 30 days and you go, hey, you haven't paid this. And they're like, oh, the invoice is missing, blah. So then all of a sudden it's like 60 days till you get paid. Michael and the team really helped with us getting on top of that, being a little bit more proactive with our customers, and kind of mapping out the ones that weren't going to pay us or could be problematic. Which was nice because it meant I could just stop caring about it.
Yeah, exactly. Michael?
Yeah, we looked at accounts receivable every call, and that was something I was acutely aware of. That, and with specialist agencies and service businesses that deal with bigger ones, it's a common challenge is dealing with the bigger organizations. They know they can lean on you. And in my opinion, being like a voice for the little guy, I think it's super unfair how they treat the smaller players. And so I'm always like, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Let's be nice, but let's go and have an honest conversation about the work we've done, and that we need to make our team's payroll, and that's to feed our team as well. So it's trying to just make sure we're front of mind in a really nice way, and making sure we're delivering on time for them. We're meeting our end of the bargain, and ID Crowd were always delivering amazing work. That wasn't the problem. It was more just making us cognizant of hitting the milestones regularly, not getting too product focused, and making sure we're still shipping work in a way that keeps the business healthy and happy. You're
in the machine, right? And the machine's like, oh, we don't look at it for 30 days. And then if you resubmit it, we're not going to look at it for another 30 days because that's the process. Like, I see Michael as one of the partners in the business. So it's without him, we wouldn't have achieved all the things we could have. We got that whole skill set that, we had Michael and his virtual CFO skill set. We had Michael's network that he could tap into anytime there was a problem. And we had all the bookkeeping. So you get all these things that you can suddenly tap into that can help you versus just one person who has a singular skill set. And that was cheaper for us than actually hiring someone.
It's still a tricky one that I struggle with, Josh, in my sales calls in terms of what problem I'm trying to help people solve, because often the value is also freedom from stress or freedom from anxiety and peace of mind, which is a really hard dollar value to, like, how do you put a price on a good night's sleep? It's a tricky one to kind of put into dollar terms and say, hey, this is the extra cash you put in your bank. We could look at like the cash flow and additional cash in the bank on a regular basis, which reduced stress. But it's always a tricky one in kind of coaching and accountability services, how you kind of package it and those kind of things.
A lot of advisory relationships have a non-insignificant component of therapy. Like it's a bit, maybe a bit close to the bone for some, but it's definitely true. Therapy with spreadsheets.
So it was really nice that we could engage in with no commitment. And we're like, well, worst case, we do it for a couple of months. We figure out we're doing everything amazing and we don't need anyone. But as always happens with these kind of things, when you get the expert in, they're like, well, here's how I can help shape you, here's how I can help skill you, and here's the gaps you currently have. So it only took a couple of months for us to go, yeah, we're sold. And we obviously kept him all the way to the end. It's one of the things when we originally spoke to Michael, he's like, what's your exit strategy? And we're like, we don't have one. And we did slowly start talking about that, because we're like, well, we want to exit at some point. So one of the things we're working with Michael on is, how to make the business more presentable for an exit. We had just gone through a big transformation. We'd done a whole bunch of reporting stuff. We'd restructure the teams to be scalable. So we'd kind of done this big investment on how to make the company scalable. And then we were just seeing the returns from that. So we were probably about 6 to 12 months post transformation. And everything was just gelling and the company was growing. It was kind of humming along nicely. We were honest with them and said, we think it's a poor time for us to sell to you because we're growing. And why would we sell to you now when we think we're going to be worth more in 1 to 2 years? Now, their response to everything was actually pretty good. They were like, well, look, we can factor that into the price. But they also said, like, when we're like, look, we're just not interested. They were like, why don't you just talk to us? Just sit down and have a chat. Tell us about your business. We'll tell you about our business, all that kind of stuff. So the actual, from first contact to the sale was probably about 14 months. So about 10 months, 8 months of negotiation, backwards and forwards and wooing and all that kind of stuff. But what essentially happened over that time is the more we spoke to them, the more we started to like them. And interestingly, we actually started to realize that there's a decent culture fit there. So yeah, we kind of had the conversations and went, well, look, we're not willing, we weren't planning to sell right now, but we've got this opportunity. It's a decent opportunity. It means the whole company comes across, which is nice. We get jobs out of it. The ID crowd doesn't die. It just has a new evolution. And they actually seem like a really good culture fit, which surprised us. So we were like, if we sell in 5 years, is there a guarantee that someone's going to come knocking on our door that's actually a good culture fit? Or are we going to end up selling to someone that we don't like because we're so burnt out that we just want to get out? So as we kind of went through that transition, eventually we were like, okay, this is something we're interested in. Once we kind of made that decision that it's something we're interested in, then it kind of flipped to, how do we do this in a way that supports the team? So that was then an interesting challenge. So we kind of, like, the first decision was mainly about us, in that, it included the team as well, because we're like, we want good culture, because I guess part of it is we only want to sell to a company that we want to work for. So we weren't going, we're going to sell to Deloitte and then 2 years we're going to leave and just dump everyone there. So we're like, if we're willing to go across, then we know it's fundamentally a decent decision for most people. And then we kind of went through the process of going, well, how do we take everyone on this journey? How do we make them not hate us? How do we help them see that in the same way it's good for us, in that the ID crowd can grow and evolve, and Nick can take her career to a new trajectory. It's also a decent opportunity for everyone else to have.
It's something that I'm super proud that I played a small part in, absolutely. And that's something that I want to help all my clients do if that's what their goal is. So I'm really glad I got that experience with the ID crowd, because that's something that a lot of small business owners do get tired and want to think about the exit. And that's a fantastic thing to help people get. And it's a really positive thing to deliver. And the reason that I really want the ID crowd part of this call, Josh, is because Lee touched on it there, was that their focus on humans and the human side of their business. They're really ethical, really open and transparent, and like just good humans. And that was reflected in their great work, but also was reflected, to be fair, into like the fact that they wanted to join Deloitte. So there was obviously the ID crowd's ID crowd's culture was a huge strength of theirs, and they had really low like team churn. They had a lot of long-term people who liked working there, even through the remote times, even through the pandemic and stuff. So I was really proud to see that they'd built a really cool company with a bunch of good humans, and then that was able to have a successful exit and keep their team together and to find a win-win.
Yeah.
I thought was a really great success to do that ethically, to do that looking after everyone, and to move on to bigger and better things. I think it should be celebrated.
No, it's a really cool story. Really appreciate both of you jumping on to tell me about it, actually.
Lovely to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Thanks,
See you
team.
later, guys.
Have a good day.
You
Bye.
too.